stacks and for a penny, and she sold us something called ciderine. Ciderine was in a small firkin, and you got a kind of a neck up full of this. But it's the most beautiful nectar we ever had. And I often spoke to Thomas, what was ciderine? Where did it come from? What was it about? And I see a little history of them now, and I'm going to trace out that sometime with other people. These are all little portraits, these pictures are all little cameos, vignettes, and it's like pressing a key on the keyboard of my computer and pop-ups come up. They trigger memories, like searching the Google of the 1850s, Vincent, in my youth. So every picture, every page I opened up, pressed a memory that I wasn't aware it was there, but suddenly it reveals a whole treasure box, and it's a wonderful experience. Not much about that. Next to that, we all knew about Deenihan. Deenihan was the greatest dead woman that's come in the mind of all time, and she got us together 2 times a year. First of all, if Dev was ever in the vicinity, he paraded down the town past Deenihan, and we got to throw the petrol on the fire and light the fire when he was passing down the street, and we all cheered as loud as we could, and boxes of sweets was thrown out from the first floor window. That's how they got forced in. And we were converted to the gospel according to De Valera by that mere gesture. The other time was that she got turf in. Well, that's a subject I won't mention for loving. She got turf in at a certain time of the year. It was dropped in the back way of the stall, and all of us local children around had to draw in the turf. And there was a great party afterwards in Deenihan for lemonade and sweets and Vincent has a very nice story about her. He went in to spend a penny worth of sweets from her one time, and he said, I want a penny worth of mixed sweets. And she threw 3 sweets on the counter, and she said to him, mix them yourself. In my own house before my father bought it in 1936, it was owned by the Crowleys, and the Crowleys was an elected member of Sinn Féin of the first 2 Dáils in 1919 and 1921. He was re-elected again to the 3rd Dáil in 1922, also a Sinn Féin member, taking his place in the pro-treaty side. In the 4th, 5th and 6th Dáils, he was re-elected as a member of Kennelly. So he was, the history of that now itself, that little sentence, there was a huge history there. In that. Noel Crowley, his son, set up a general printing business in the house I grew up. So it's appropriate that I should be talking about beautiful printing and beautiful writing in the house, very house I grew up. Next door we had Malone's, which was a motor car business, and I remember Francis Malone driving the V8, and he had a big V8, probably the first in North Kerry. Next door to him was Donovan's, Jim Boy Donovan, the old man who had returned from Chicago at the early part of the century and bought a shop in Church Street. And Kevin, his grandson, traced him in Chicago recently using archives out there and using an old photograph that he had in the house, and he took it out from the frame and found the name of the photographer in Chicago who had taken his grandfather's photograph in 1910. And from that, he was able to trace where his grandfather and his granduncle lived in Chicago. There are wonderful little things like that, and it shows you the value. It's like a detective, you know, tracing these things is wonderful. 2 doors down from that, you have Flavin's bookshop. Hugely influential, seminal shop in our town. Dan Flavin and his brother, who was also an MP in London before the independence, and who was ejected from the House of Commons for singing rebel songs and for protesting on behalf of Ireland. And that's in the book. It's just a small vignette. But again, and it was out of this bookshop that much of the literature and inspiration for literature I'm amazed at the amount of information you can glean from this from an intelligent read. Or slowly. First of all, you can see how people came into the
bench ahead of me here, people a lot more deserving of your time than me. This book is an absolute triumph. It's a beautiful piece of work, and you know it does take such a long time to put something like this together. And I think Vincent is a great example to so many people in this country. A lot of people, when they retire, they just put their feet up. But he took what is his passion and turned it into a new career, which is astounding. And I'm glad that in the introduction he gives credit to my father for encouraging me along the way. And that was definitely one book encouraging the other. Two of the greatest rogues that ever walked down. But it is, you know, I think what this book illustrates is the fact that, you know, every time a photograph is taken, it's capturing a piece of contemporary history. Whether you take it with our iPhones today or in the range of time of the book that Vincent covers, there were very few cameras around the place. Those memories are really precious and they're valuable for all of us. You know, we're going to take these books home and mull over them over Christmas and for generations to come. Because for all technology in the world, you know, it's very hard to beat a book, the tactile nature of a book. All those pictures and those wonderful designs of letterheads and stationery from businesses around the soul they're now protected forever, and that's really important. And that's one of the things that we thought about with the Kennelly archive as well. That it's actually that it's, you know, you protect the work of the future, make sure the future generations can see all the history. And you know, there's been lots of books published in this town, and lots of great authors. But what Vincent has done is actually a different kind of a task. He's a real storyteller, but he's also a salesman. He's a self-publisher, and you know, a lot of the books that are self-published are vanity publishing. But Vincent is in fact an entrepreneur himself. He wasn't going to be wasting money giving a cut to the publishers. And what I really would like to know, it's been beautifully designed by Bright Ideas in Killarney, a real piece of Kerry publishing history. But it was printed in Spain, and I just love to be a fly on the wall for the negotiations between Vincent and that Spanish printer. How the Spanish printer reacted to the concept of book money. Thank you.
This is a great occasion for you, a special occasion, and it's sure to be part of such a special occasion. I'm delighted to be here with Kathleen. I know that Kathleen should no doubt be confirming later with you great encouragement and support. I know that from visiting your house, and certainly without her help and assistance and tolerance, no doubt, and patience, you wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't have got where you are this evening with this book. Also, it's great to be here with Norman and Karen as well, and their families, and it's coincidence really, I suppose, that had this great occasion in your family with the birth of your twins, on the occasion of, I think, Vincent's birthday as well, and the publication of this masterpiece. So it's really a great evening for the family, and it's great to see Laura as well, the woman who has great interest, I know, in North Kerry and the store, Vincent's sister here, and the literature too. So overall, this is a special occasion, and I'm delighted that there are so many people here to just join with Vincent and to show Vincent that people really appreciate what you're doing. And this turnout here is a reflection of this, and they really respect what you're doing, and people see you in action, looking for material at all times, and saving it, and as Paul Bloom would say, keeping it to yourself as well. But very, very importantly, so what you have done. So this really production is iconic in every sense of the word. And when you look at this book, Billy mentioned I produced the book last year myself. A lot of design work went into it. And just to remind Billy, actually made 16 grand with the last team. Fashion houses in the soul. And when you go back and look at the number of milliners in the town and others, back there, dressmakers in the town, also tailors in the town at that particular time. The town was always at the forefront in fashion, and also the number of shoe shops in the town as well. There's and I won't, because Brian is not in it, I won't go through all the things. I read it all today actually, but there's some really great stories. I suppose there's one that we were all aware of, the Tom Doodle story, which is a great story, and you read it yourself. John B. Keane gives a great description of the whole Tom Doodle history, and it's just a fascinating event, and it wouldn't happen anywhere else, only in this town. And I'm sure that Tom Doodle probably, a lot of you would say, would make him a far better job in the budget than probably we did last week. It might be his manifesto back again. But that was just a fascinating story, and also I noticed that that great man, Owen Duffy, was down here in the stall. He had a lot of supporters at the same time. There's a photograph of him there, the great blue shot leader at that particular time, and a crowd in the stall as well. And another fascinating thing, and I know Brian will be referring to this as well, is just, I suppose, the social commentary. When you look at the photographs in the book, there's a photograph, for example, picture of local Protestant school kids in the stall at the start of the 19th century. They're all fairly well dressed and all. There's a photograph then of the primary school in the 50s, and there's a major difference. People still had, they were barefoot and so on. So in that alone, it kind of makes, I suppose, a very, very important commentary as well. Just in conclusion, could I just say that this production by Vincent will be treasured by the store people, and especially by surviving family members and present owners of the premises, and no doubt will be of interest to others not from the store who have an interest in how commerce flourished in the mid-19th century and the 20th century. They will subtly find rich pickings here, and I suppose every one of us will find a connection with this book, whether through business, through cousins, relatives, or whatever. But certainly I was delighted, Vincent, that you included a photograph, actually, I just noticed it, the weighing of McInnes there, and it's an all-male group of people. It's on page 231. There's one woman in it, actually, Deenihan, who happens to be my aunt. So she's the only woman in the whole bunch of men. So thank you very much.
A sofa or a lamp or even a painting at times. So make sure you all get plenty of the books and keep them, because it's a book that should be in every house in North Kerry and in the stall in particular. So if you haven't got one yet, when Vincent comes down here in a minute, you can get one. And it's great value, and there's loads of pictures for those of you who are not great at the reading, like Christy Sheedy here. But his wife Mary's a teacher, and she's doing her best to... They are... I have them all here. They're Katie, Molly, Lily, and what's the young guy's name again? Jack. Will you all stand up there, the grandchildren, and wave at everyone? And Santi come twice. You say Stevie's here. Some pressure on everyone. The last few are signing the book. There's Alistair, who's had many great launches herself for beautiful paintings. Shop is up there, and it's full of great stuff as well for Christmas. Another local heroine or hero.